Dear viewers, welcome speakers. It's such a pleasure to be here today with you. My name is Irina Litchfield. Many know me as Crypto Superwoman. It is my honor to fill in shoes of the host today. I love BCTV. I love what we're doing. This platform is becoming a very important network for so many of us, for many investors and entrepreneurs all over the world. We're becoming closer and closer. And as the world progresses very fast, we also see our conversation progress as well. Today, it's my honor to talk to you to really have this beautiful discussion with our amazing speakers, with Jose and Julio and Mark, about FoodTech, food delivery, and everything and food processing, of course. So without further ado, please, Jose, could you introduce yourself and tell our speakers a little bit more about yourself?
Hi, Irina. Thank you so much for having me on your show, and really happy to be here today. So I'm Jose Grasa. I've been an entrepreneur now for 40 years. I've been a business angel for more or less like 26 and a VC for around 3. I've been active in different verticals, mainly in building brands, and it goes as crazy as aviation, chemicals, consumer products. But the last 20 years, I've been mainly been focused on developing FinTech technology, in essence, for small, medium enterprises, those who are the most needed. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you so much, Irina.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. It's interesting how branding. So you've been doing branding, and I think the world needs more branding, and how it took you into the innovation of financial technology. I think so many of us are really motivated by really democratizing opportunities for people all over the world. And so when you say that, that's what I hear, kind of the true freedom, the true opportunities for everybody, not just the privileged. Thank you so much, Jose. Julio, would you take the baton and
I'll take the baton. I'm Julio Marquez. I am the managing partner of New York Bay Capital. We are a partnership with many partners and presence around the world, mostly in Latin America. We cover from Canada to Buenos Aires, or from Canada to Tierra del Fuego. And we also invest. So we either advise clients on how to raise capital. Those clients tend to be larger corporations, already very established. And we advise them on their M&A strategies. Or we welcome the opportunity to invest in small companies, startups, growth capital, which we could invest in, and we can also advise and form investment groups for. Our verticals include today's topic, which is food and food distribution, food logistics. We've been present in that sector for over 20 years, either advising, as I said, large corporations or with small investments. So I look forward to the discussion. Let's see where the industry is leading. And I also look forward to the audience reaching out, because there is capital right now to invest. And I think that the food industry, unlike some other industries, is ripe for change, is doing great things. There are very many exciting things happening. And so we want to be a part of it.
That is so true. And viewers, please reach out. Remember, we're approaching end of the year, and it is so important for so many venture capitalists to be able to deploy, and we must deploy now, and these opportunities are here. So don't wait until you have a perfect pitch. Don't wait until you have something perfect. Take that first step, and you will see that it is a progress. It is a relationship that you're going to develop with the investors. And ideally, what's going to happen is that the investors that are going to deploy funding into your project are going to also deploy their attention. And that's what you're looking for. And so don't wait, don't be perfect. Take your steps now. We need more connectivity between the investors and entrepreneurs. The olden times are shredded. It's all gone, guys. Everything is virtual for now, for until who knows how long. So reach out. We're here for you. Julio is here for you, and Jose is here for you, and Mark is here for you. I'm here for you. Our whole network of VCTV is here for you. Thank you so much, Julio. It's such an encouraging message. Mark.
You muted yourself. I can't hear you.
Oh, you guys couldn't
You
hear what
muted
I was
yourself.
saying?
No, you
I
muted
was
yourself.
muted all the time. Oh.
All
Could
right.
you please
So,
introduce yourself?
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's not my first time on VCTV. Been on VCTV because some of the topics are directly related to most of what I do. I started my career in the music business, mainly doing concerts, and from concerts I expanded to advertising. From advertising, I expanded to the internet in 1997. We had our first e-commerce company called Urban Closet in 1997, based out of Boca Raton, Florida. And after that, got involved in restaurant businesses and different things. I mean, I'm kind of ADD, so I'm all over the place. I always have to be doing something. The reason why I'm on this show is because we do own a coffee company in Costa Rica called Lat84. And we are also starting a food delivery company. That's kind of a different type of a thing. And we're going to base it in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is a good test market, 5 million people. They've adopted well to Globo and Uber Eats, but I see the faults of a global company in a Latino or Latin American culture. Things don't work the same. But the amazing part of that is that the market has adopted. So I mean, even taking all the economic differences between, you know, a small country like Costa Rica and say Mexico, where Julio's from, and New York, where I'm from, or well, Julio's in New York now, but you know, there's a lot of differences. So global companies have to kind of understand the local culture, and I think that's where the small local companies could actually. And I know I'm talking in the future. I should have just introduced myself. I'll save that for later.
It's great.
Kyle would have cut me off already.
No. And look, guys, there are 4 of us today here.
Right.
So we can actually, we can dive in a little bit. Sometimes there's 7 or 10 people. Now then you have a minute and it's great. It should,
Right.
I feel like today is a perfect size of the conversation that we have. It's
Great,
interesting that I think that this new reality proposes a lot of opportunities for disruption for small companies. Those,
Right.
I believe that those areas that were maybe impenetrable and hard to enter for small companies because of kind of a domination of the large companies on different, areas. Now those opportunities are there because simply because a lot of big companies are trying to figure out how to adapt, right? And what a better way to be able to come into the picture right now and have opportunity to run for it. So I really appreciate it. It's interesting. So coffee company, let's talk a little bit more about it. But before I ask you guys questions about this, I want to really talk to you first about food processing. So we talk about the delivery and we have some solutions. We have about kind of a food tech too, we've been discussing, but processing. I think processing is such an interesting topic. And so I would love for you to kind of maybe mention 2 things. What are the biggest challenges that we're seeing right now? And what are the biggest opportunities that you are seeing with the food processing? And since you already have the microphone, Mark, I would love to give you the chance to kind of answer that first.
Well, food processing for me, modern food processing for me is not really my forte. My whole vision on food processing, when you relate it to coffee as a beverage, is to keep it as organic as possible. Because I see coffee going the same route that wine has gone over a couple of centuries, where any wine works because it's trendy and people don't know how to differentiate between a real wine and a trendy wine. So I think the same thing is happening with food, where people are saying, "Hey, I want a steak," but they're really eating plant-based steak. So it's really not steak, but they still call it steak. So I think some of the winners will be the people that stay really focused on what is food and not get into creating food and calling it food. So if you get what I mean. So I don't know. I can't really talk too much on food processing because it's not something I've really dove into. But I mean, if I had to give you an answer, I would say that me personally, anything that I do with food, whether it's coffee, whether it's tea, whether it's grapes or whatever, I'm going to stay as organic as possible. I'm not going to hire a chemist to make my food. That's just the way I feel.
Yeah. Stay natural and connected
Exactly.
to what the mother nature has designed for us and which have been working for us. What about you, Jose? Would you like to add to that? And I would love to hear your opinion. I know we've had a number of discussions on this topic.
So the way I look at it is probably from a different perspective. And the reason for that is that we did quite a thorough research in mapping out the whole world, what's coming from which country. So what do they import? What do they export? So today we have that map finished, and more or less we can understand who is exporting what and who is importing what. And why is this so important? Because the food processing industry basically lives in essence, okay, on primary products. So they will buy it, right? We don't have that knowledge when we go to the supermarket and put it. Eventually comes on our table. We don't think about it. But eventually, a lot of food that we consume today is not produced around us. It's produced sometimes very far away. And that's the reason why when we go to the supermarket, we have, let's say, fruits that normally we don't have, or eventually they don't even grow at that moment of the year in our region, right? So once you understand who are the big meat producers, or who are the big grain producers, or who are the big soya producers, or whatever it is, then you suddenly see that there's a whole world economy running on top of this. And in essence, it's not in a huge amount of hands. So they are concentrated in X amount of families that have built up empires based more or less around some strategic decision making of certain, let's say, food primary products. Okay, either it comes from the US, which is still a very big producer and exporter, or from Brazil, which is also another one, but it can, also be China. Okay, you don't really know. What makes me exciting, and that's I think is the most important, is that we need to come up with a system, and maybe blockchain is a good solution for that. Is that we need to be able to trace where the stuff comes from that we are eating every day, more or less, right? The same way that we have on these packages, what's more or less contained in it, the amount of proteins, fat, and whatever it is, including a lot of these chemical products that we really don't know what it is. Some of them are not even chemical. You look at the number and you think it's chemical, but it's not. You just give it a reference. So there's a lot of stuff that it's not clear to the consumer. And I think it's time that we are able to trace it and make it really transparent, because at the end, it's about, I always look at like very good cuisines, right? I like to cook. So when I look at very good cuisines like Italian, right? It's not a complex cuisine. What you understand from Italian cuisine is that they always use high-end, very good quality products. And that's why when you eat something, from Italian, normally it tastes very well. It is good quality, right? It's all about the materials that you use. So that's my perspective.
Transparency and clarity in food and a source of food, I think I can agree with that. It's so important to us. And I think that really allows for for education, right? Because then we can really educate consumers on what those things are. And also everything is a chemical, right? So like everything is a chemical. We made out of chemicals. Chemistry is just all around us. But people really don't know what it is, and it would be so amazing. When we cook, we go to Whole Foods, to Central Market here and cook. And you're right that the best food comes from this very simple but really good whole ingredient, whole nice steak with a little side, especially with like a good butter. Now we have a milking cow, so we make our own butter. But with the good butter, and I love garlic, and slice some homegrown tomatoes or bought tomatoes, some basil on top of it. I mean, it's just now. Julio, do you have something to add about the food processing?
Yes, I do. And you brought up cows. So first of all, here are some cows. And I bring up cows not only because you brought them up, but because we are investing and following a company called American Beef Operations. And, a big part of the food and food processing involves beef. There's just no question that beef is a very major part of everyone's diet. Now, beef processing is quite a challenge. You need to be able to process beef cleanly and efficiently. And the virus made it clear that beef processing was an Achilles heel of the economy. Many beef processing plants had to close because the workers were getting sick. They are, they work in very close proximity, bad conditions, and we're talking about, the United States, of the very developed country of the United States, and yet it has a definite liability, almost but certainly a lack in the way it processes beef. So so one of the companies that we're invested in is called, as I said, American Beef Operations, and it's a company. This is our portfolio of beef companies. I'm sorry, of food companies. And American Beef Operations is up there, and it's a company that has developed a technology so that once the cow has been rendered or killed, to put it normally, there are ways to process it that are clean and better and more efficient, and then there's the old way, which is mostly manual and involving a lot of labor content, human labor content, and too many steps where contamination can be introduced. It takes a long time for a piece of beef to reach a store. If you know the industry, you know that there are many different steps. There are companies that specialize in having the cows, others that specialize in killing the cows, others that specialize in chopping up the cow, others in separating the different pieces and using them from various purposes. And then there's the packaging and the grinding and the distribution. Very complicated. So not to make a long story short, we welcome companies, entrepreneurs, and investors who are looking at the beef industry today, not as much in creating artificial beef, which is something that has made a lot of noise lately with companies that create beef or beef-like substances from plants that vegetarians can eat, and you can eat a hamburger made of plants. That's interesting. We think that's maybe too many people are focusing on that area, and I think that the whole idea of substituting beef, if you're already a vegetarian, you may not even be interested in eating artificial beef. But in any case, real beef is still a billions of dollars industry, and there are so many different ways that you can optimize the process, not only logistically, but also health-wise. and also, you know, with a view of how to bring that industry that still very much functions as if it were not only the 20th century, but the beef industry functions as if it were the middle of the 20th century. Um, you know, beef processing has not evolved in any way, any significant way, since the 1930s, 40s, 50s. It's it's an industry, you know, that is lagging in technology, and it's dominated by only a few companies. From a macro perspective, even though it's such a long chain of contributors. So any innovation there is welcome, and American Beef Operations is sort of on the forefront of looking at, you know, better ways to to get that beef to to your table, so that you can enjoy your steak, Irina, just as you want it. Simple, nice, perhaps organic, but definitely pathogen free. That is quite important. Um, that's what I can say about about food processing. Another of our companies is called Just, and Just is in the business of creating eggs that are made for plants. Um, there, you're trying to substitute the chickens, um, you know, and it's sort of an interesting technological approach to a different sort of problem. But it's growing fast, and I encourage you to try its products.
That sounds great. It's interesting. As you know, I've said it many times. I'm really excited about our farm. What we've learned is that the problem is not the beef. The problem is not the chickens. It's how do we raise it? How do we, like you said, how do we harvest it? And that's one of the things that we've learned about it, is that it's the harvest. We harvest the meat. And interestingly to me, during what became apparent here in Texas is that the big processing factories, as they were shutting down, it really opened up a lot of opportunities for kind of a smaller butcheries, for more conscious approach butcheries that kind of say, okay, we want to process the cows so they're, let's say, not scared, right? Because the stress hormone, you know, goes into the cells and it creates whatever. And another interesting thing that started happening is that the regulations started opening up and kind of saying, okay, the monopoly on meat harvesting or meat processing kind of a factories does not work in these situations, and we need to be able to, for example, allow farms to sell directly, right, directly to the consumer in a lot of ways. So those are really huge and great opportunities that are happening. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie called Kiss the Land, but it really describes very well kind of the idea of a problem being with kind of a traditional farming and traditionally raising, you know, the grain, the corn to feed the cows. And remember too, and I want to point this out and then we'll move on, I promise. Cows are not designed to eat grain. Cows are not designed to metabolize corn. And when they do, they become sick. Their rumen becomes ill. They do not produce proper hormones. And so not hormones, the proper, you know, proper protein. And then you have to give them hormones. So you have unhealthy cows that grow faster, and then they constantly take antibiotics, and just to keep them growing faster, right? And I really appreciated how, Julio, you said that there's fractionalization all the way through the pathway. And what we learn here in farming too is that there are farmers that will produce little cows, and then there's farmers that will go and buy them, and then there's basically this huge supply chain of cows constantly transferring hands. But that does not really happen with kind of a grow with cows that do grass fed for the most part, right? So regenerative farming is really great because it allows you to do a lot of interesting things. I won't talk about it anymore. Just watch the movie because it will tell you exactly what it is, where we are, and you know how to apply it and what to do and what experts to use. So now let's talk about food tech. Food tech, I think, is so exciting and so interesting because to me, food tech also means kind of it allows us to grow food, right? So now we've talked about growing beef, and that's great. And just a full transparency, it's extremely expensive still, not necessarily profitable, and we don't really know how it's going to work, right? Like there's a companies that went public and all that, but in the end of the day, I am not eating grown meat. I will eat grass-fed happy cow. I will drink milk from a happy cow. I will eat chickens that are pasture raised. I want to eat things that are connecting me to earth, and I trust the evolution, and I trust our nature, you know, to make sure that my health is taken care of in that way. But there's other food tech. Would you, Julio, could you expand more on your portfolio companies or your thoughts of what are
Sure.
great companies are there?
Sure, of course. I brought in a happy cow here for now. As you can see clearly, it's healthy and it's probably not all upset about hormones. But it's true about it's so true what you say about cows, you know, never really being intended to eat the grain. And one of the differences between American beef and other good beef like Argentine beef is that idea that they eat grain here, which is, it's basically a way to keep Iowa and Nebraska happy, right? Because they grow all the corn. In terms of food tech, I put up my portfolio, and you know, I forgot to include Volcafe, another client. And when you guys mentioned coffee in the beginning, I should have mentioned Volcafe, so I quickly added their logo there. Just is probably in food processing one of the leaders, or food tech, because it's developing, you know, eggs or egg-like substances from plants. The goal is to have the same protein content as eggs, but of course none of the cholesterol. And the thinking is that people will eat a plant-based egg because of the health perception, the negative health perception of cholesterol. And yet eggs are so versatile. You can make, of course, omelets. You can make them in many different ways. And it's such a breakfast staple that the thinking of Just is that there is enough of a market to penetrate eggs and substitute for people to really substitute the egg, as long as the taste is close. It's a company that started producing first mayonnaise. They actually even discontinued that product already, but that's how they started. It's still private. It should go public next year. There's plenty of information about it online. If you look it up, their website is ju.st, one of the most efficient websites I've ever seen, because it's only 4 letters, ju.st. Just then moved on to making the type of substitute egg that comes in a carton that you can pour. There's a lot of tech there. It's not difficult. I mean, I'm sorry, it's not easy at all to create a pourable product that will last on the shelves for quite a long time in a container, and yet will have the consistency when you pour it on top of a frying pan to basically look like an egg. And it's meant for you to create an omelet or make scrambled type of eggs. That obviously doesn't work for sunny side up. But now Just is working more on the pre-cooked omelet and selling that in a frozen way, as opposed to simply a refrigerated way. It's now a frozen product that you can put up in a microwave. So it already comes with the peppers or the tomatoes or whatever you want to add to spinach to your omelet. It's pre-made. It's easier to cook and to consume, and they've made inroads now selling it through fast food. Starbucks, Burger King, places like that are now carrying the product. And there are a lot of people who didn't used to stop at a fast food place for breakfast, but now are. And part of the allure is that you've got protein, but that the protein is healthy. So look, it's definitely a food tech company. They have other ideas They also they're working on developing meat, but not, no, or by meat, I mean chicken, not beef, like what we were talking about before. It's a different industry, but chicken meat, except their chicken meat, they're working on developing it so that the cells grow independently of the chicken in a lab. So you are able, through various techniques, to grow an animal cell, feed it, and then the cell grows into chicken cells, but you never had to have a live chicken that you would then have to feed and eventually kill. You're basically growing artificial chicken cells, well, not natural chicken cells, but in an artificial sort of way, so that you create the chicken muscle and therefore the chicken pieces, so that you can then make maybe ground chicken meat without having a chicken. It sounds weird. It's definitely high tech, and we're very excited with whatever progress that they're making. It's a company that has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in R&D, and wish it the best of luck. But if you all want to participate in any way with Just, give me a call. I would say that as far as FoodTech, that's my best experience and best knowledge derives from having followed Just for some time. But I think that FoodTech overall is a very fertile place right now for investment in various ways. Keho, which is Keho, these bars that I also have that I'm showing, they follow the keto diet. The keto diet is becoming an important diet that people are following. There's a whole philosophy behind it, some of it very scientific. And so these are bars that are produced for that. And we're invested in backing a company that is trying to ride.
And that's like Keho, right?
Keho, yeah.
Keho. Yeah. I should follow it. I live in ketosis. I've been living in ketosis for 3 years. And by the way, before we move on to you, Mark, I want to know more about what kind of a tech you guys are seeing, food tech for coffee, actually. But we're born in ketosis, so ketosis is just a metabolic state. It's not kind of a fancy diet or anything. It's just kind of the way you run your metabolism. It's what biohackers do. So I am a biohacker, obviously. So anyhow, Mark, would you expand more? Julio, thank you so much. I love your portfolio companies. You guys do amazing job, and I'm always so impressed. And really looking forward to opportunity to when we finally have a chance to work together. It's fast approaching. It's just moving very slow. Mark, so when it comes to food tech, what kind of applications do you guys seeing in the coffee?
Well, the first thing that I want to ask Julio is, did the plant come first or the egg came first? I just want to know that.
Great question.
Okay, right. I
No
guess
answer.
The plant came first, right?
The cows came first.
Exactly. Coffee is still a very analog type of a business. And I think Julio could say that. I mean, there's a side of it that's not analog, that's very techy, where they're mixing beans and stuff like that. But then again, I mean, do we still, at what point do we still call it an egg? Or at what point do we still call it meat? At what point do we still call it? When I see plant-based meat, I'm saying, how could plant-based meat be meat if it's not meat? Is it meat or is it plant-based? Or is it plant with meat? It's confusing at the end. But Julio used a very important word that's called perception. And perception is basically how we perceive something. So I perceive something like, okay, that everybody's jumping into not everybody, but some people are jumping into the food business or the food industry or the beef industry based on one reason alone. And that reason is scary, and it's just money, because everybody's making money. So about 6 years ago, when my son was I was talking to one of my son's teachers, and she said the state of the world is scary, because today we asked a third grade class, where does the tomato come from? And they said Mercadona or Leader or Ali, it was in Barcelona, so they mentioned all the European carry forward. And that's scary because kids don't understand where a tomato comes from. They think it grows in the supermarket. So, I mean, for 100,000 years, we survived without food tech. Why do we think that it's important that we need to solely rely on food tech to survive? I live in Costa Rica. I can throw corn seeds in the back and they grow in 4 weeks. I can grow everything that doesn't grow in cold weather, I can grow here. So if it's potatoes, I'm going to have a hard time. If it's tomatoes, 2 or 3 weeks, I have tomatoes. And I mean, it's kind of weird because I mean, everything grows 2 and 3 times a year here. So it's a good place to be. What happens, and I could open up my door and you can see probably 100 cows across the street. You can see about 400 chickens up the road. You can see avocado trees up and down. That's food tech. You know what I mean? It's just an analog version of food tech. What's going to happen with that analog version of food tech for the people that can't afford to pay all this money to buy a steak that has gone through, like, I think it was Jose that said it. It moves from here to there, to there, to there. And every time that thing switches, we're paying another broker or intimate. We're paying somebody along the line. So, I mean, if you went to BMW directly and bought a BMW, it probably cost you about $6,000. If you bought it in New York City, it probably cost you about $70,000. Because now you have to pay a freight forwarder, you have to pay storage, you have to pay this, you have to pay that, you have to pay that. And the same thing can't happen with food because at the end of the day, we have more poor people than rich people on this planet. And both of them do the same thing. They both eat. And you know what we do after we eat. So, I mean, we all do that. And I think what's happening is that with so much money, they're saying, hey, how do we make money off of a need? And then you have these Nestle's that come into Costa Rica and buy coffee, and then they mix it with other coffee, and then they call it Latin American coffee because they get the cheapest coffee in Guatemala, and they mix it with the cheapest coffee in Nicaragua, and they mix it with a cheap coffee in Costa Rica, and then they call it Latin American blend. But I mean, if you know coffee, you're not going to drink that coffee. You want coffee that's grown by Julio up in the mountains in Cartago. You go get and you pay him, and you understand 80 families live off that coffee. So, I mean, I'm a humanitarian at the end. And I think Jose's been on shows with me before about gaming. And I would say things like, hey, yeah, we need people playing games, but we don't need them playing games 23 hours a day. So we need people growing food. We need people going into food tech, but that's not the only thing we need, because at the end of the day, all that food tech is dependent on one thing. It's called energy. So, I mean, yeah, we're getting rid of a lot of cows, but then we're creating a whole bunch of energy. When Julio goes and grows tomatoes for me, or I grow my own tomatoes, it takes, human energy. I go out there, I sweat, I do my thing, and that's kind of the way I want to grow my child, because I want to say, hey, don't be dependent on a supermarket to bring your food. If they block the roads like they did in Costa Rica a couple of weeks ago, Walmart was without beef. And I mean, they're in the middle of San Carlos where there's nothing but beef around them and milk around them. But if you look at the milk containers in Walmart in the middle of and I'm sorry, I'm going off on a rant. If you look at Walmart that sits in the middle of the dairy capital of Costa Rica, and you look at their corn, it comes from China. The milk comes from another country, Nicaragua or some other place. The beef comes from another place. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And that's why I like the Boneras of Spain, the small supermarket chains, that they're probably 30 or 40 kilometers away from the cities that they feed off. And you can go to those cities and you can visit the plants and you can see where your chicken comes from. You can see where, that's the food tech I like. I don't like the food tech that, my corn comes from China. And nothing against China, but I'm saying corn grows on cement here. Why are we growing? And then I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure Julio could answer that reason. But being a layman in this food tech thing, I'm like, hey, I mean, if you can grow corn, grow corn. So that's where my investment and my focus with Carrito is. Carrito is to get these local farmers that have made have survived life, through growing corn, And now people get in their car because they have a car now, and they go to Walmart 15 miles away to buy canned corn from when Julio's growing corn down the street. So, I mean, how do we get Julio to participate in something that his whole family, generations have done, grown corn, and now they can't compete against a company in China? I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I'm on a layman's term here, right? So I'm just talking from a guy that doesn't know a lot like Julio, maybe Jose and
I
yourself,
think
but
that's
I
a
see
different
it.
Julio, though.
Okay, I'm
it's
sorry,
meant to
Julio.
That's Tico. That's Tico Julio.
Pico Julio.
We are working on this, Mark, and it is obvious and it is much clearer to me. And maybe I'm just a fool, that believes in a better. But all over the world, people are starting to care about this. People are starting to care about where their food comes from. They're starting to care about, what's inside of their food. And to me, food tech means, how do we assist farmers to grow better regenerative farming, right? Because there's so many amazing tools. There's sensors. For example, you can use like a little camera on a Raspberry Pi. It does not include a lot of energy. It can be running on like a solar panel, tiny little solar panel energy, and it can throw you so much data, so much analysis, to where you can really make better decisions for your growing, for your feeding, for all this. And so to me, food tech means not to substitute the way nature does things, but to empower and to go back and empower people to do the regenerative farming, to be able to grow organic. And, so for example, we talk a lot about farm to market, but for example, farm to farm, the way we encourage those people that can grow corn to connect with those people that growing potatoes is to actually allow them to trade between each other, where they can train potato for a corn, or where I can have my tractor traded for the drill, right? Because if I'm a small farmer and I only have 110 acres, I cannot afford to buy all these machines, right? And if I'm not a part of the traditional farming, then I'm probably not going to get loans. I'm probably not going to get insurances, but little by little, we're getting there. And so to me, food tech is basically kind of like a farm tech. It's a way for us to use the technology to empower farmers to do regenerative farming, to go back to kind of the roots, and to make sure that I guys said it, and I'll get to you, Jose, I promise. Topsoil, loss of topsoil. Guys, we have 60 years worth of topsoil in our planet. And after that, we are having hunger and we cannot grow enough food to feed the people. That's all. And luckily, people are doing regenerative farming. So a lot of money is being deployed on that, a lot of tech being deployed at it. But Jose, would you please add your point on what food tech means to you and what you're seeing, what the problems are and what the opportunities and the benefits are?
I think also on this, I have a different perspective. So first of all, the way I look at the tech, it should help basically creating good quality products, because we already have good food available. It's not that we don't have good food, right? Our traditional food, which is not speed up, right? Which has a normal growth rate, because speed is always the enemy of quality, more or less. And so if we give it the opportunity to have a normal growth rate, and we use the technology to basically control those environments, to create better environments, that instead of having one crop in certain area, we have like 2 or 3 crops, then we have more or less the problem solved, because we have good quality food that we always had on the planet, more or less, right? With a minimum effort, okay, and just creating this environment, and without spending a lot of money in creating a lot of things that we don't know the outcome, right? I agree that it's all chemicals, but at the essence, we don't know the outcome. And once more, I saw a documentary recently that really surprised me. By the way, I'm not Italian, I'm Portuguese from origin, so I just want to clear that out. But there is a place in Italy, it's on an island, okay, and they have the highest average age in the whole world of older people. most of them, all of them, reach at least 100 years, more or less. And it's in a region which is quite limited. Okay, and they did a study why these individuals, they would get so old, you know, why the life expectation is so long. And then they checked, and it has everything to do with the quality of the food that they are able to get around them, because it's a lot of local production and the soils are quite good. And people basically have a slow pace of living compared to what we do in the cities and the way of lifestyle that we want, and the stress and the amount of work that, or the overload that we get every day. You really can't enjoy your life. And I always say that, look, you only have one life, and you are here, you know, to enjoy your life, right? It's not only about work, not only about producing, not only about making money every day. It's also about, you know, a certain lifestyle and enjoying your life, right? And food comes in there. I think the best examples that I ever had, I grew up in the Netherlands, by the way. I have this accent because I lived there for 27 years. And I think the Netherlands, in this essence, has the best example in the whole world. These guys were able to transform, was it small countries, 17, 18 million people today. And if you look how they produce vegetables, they are number one producer of food in the world today on vegetables, okay? And they don't use earth or soil, right? It's all controlled in greenhouses. Now, they are lucky that they have gas. But gas means that, you know, natural product that they have, and they can heat up those greenhouses because temperature there all over the year is not the best. But they created this FoodTech that they have, and all these greenhouses, right? Everything is controlled up to the millimeter, right? And these plants, you know, they don't have soil. The water comes through the roots, okay? It has an X amount of ingredients, right? And they have an X amount of crops, and they were able to build initially from the flower industry, which is still booming. You know, they were able to transform this now to a huge food industry. If you look at from the air, you know, from a plane, you get amazed with how many greenhouses they have, and it's quite good quality products, because even in this, right, they still respect more or less the time frames that it needs to get that good tomato. Okay, so that's where I see it. In essence, I would say that we will need to go a little bit back in time and start thinking more like having more local food, right? Why are you going to buy a tomato, even if you have airplanes, that comes from, I don't know, from the other point of the world, okay, which has a huge amount of conservation materials that you are going to eat afterwards, right? And while you can produce it more or less locally, okay, that's the issue. So if we could create technologies that are easy to adapt and use, let's say, in local environments, why are we going to get food, you know, which comes, I don't know, for God's sake, from, right? If you don't have that production, that's fine, you know, if you don't have an X amount of fruits that don't grow in your climate range, okay, I can understand that. But really, food that you can easily produce, you know, doesn't make any sense to get it from the other part of the world. And that's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. What I love about our current reality too is that a lot of people now are starting to connect back to their roots. You know, they're starting to enjoy their lives better. If they have a little bit of a land, they're starting to say, okay, I want to plant something, you know, and I see on the Facebook all the time people posting pictures of their cucumbers or basil or parsley or whatever, or tomatoes, and they're just so proud of it. They're so proud of it. It's interesting. Oh, there's a book called Ikigai, and Ikigai is basically, in this book, it describes exactly that: longevity and happiness. And longevity is tied basically through this book to happiness, and it is the connection to soil, connection to each other, and kind of a more relaxed lifestyle is that all over the world is linked to it. So I highly recommend reading Ikigai. It's a really great philosophy and a great study. But there's been a study basically done on a recent vegetables, for example, right? So let's take kale. A lot of kale that we eat actually is not nutrients dense as much as we want. And so let's take our farm. Our farm was just used the traditional farming method. So they used pesticides and herbicides and, did the thing. And, it's just kind of a traditional farming. And when we did our soil analysis, it's really, really in a bad condition, right? So right now, if I planted kale or whatever I planted into the earth that I have, I wouldn't get the good nutrients that I need to get from that plant. And so there are a lot of food tech too is happening to where you can spray your land with this bio spray that eats those chemicals and allows you to increase biodiversity in land. So we are living in a bright time. We only have 6 minutes left. So I would love for you guys to do closing thoughts and also what's the best way to find you for our viewers. Julio, would you take us into that?
Happy to. Look, final thoughts are that at the end of the day, everybody has to eat, just like Mark said, and do other things, but they also eat. And so any innovation in this industry is going to be rewarded with profits and opportunity and sales, as long as the idea is interesting and original and has some, kind of staying power. But there are plenty of ideas and there are plenty of areas. It's a vast industry. So that's why even what I said in the beginning, and I repeat it now, it'd be great if people with any kind of entrepreneurial idea or fellow investors who want to participate in general in the food, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to benefit. You could be an investor and put your money to work. Should contact us, and we will co-invest in deals. Or if you're an entrepreneur, we'll try. Even if we can't help you, we probably know someone who can. And we're not the type of advisors who charge fees for everything. Basically, if we can help you, but we know someone who can, we will refer you, help you, support you. There's no need to collect fees for everything. So the way to reach us at New York Bay Capital is through our website, nybaycapital.com, or LinkedIn. Julio A. Marquez helps, because if you just write down Julio, you might confuse me with the farmer Julio that Mark knows in Costa Rica. And I'm sure he's on LinkedIn too, and you can probably get better produce. I'll just give you a little bit of advice, but I am on LinkedIn as Julio A. Marquez, and it's really easy to reach us, and we're always going to reply. But we're excited about this industry. It's the way to go. If you're starting out, you gotta think about agribusiness. Closing thought is also that I remember taking an agribusiness class in business school back when I went to business school back in the late 80s, sorry to say. There was only one class. It was one class called agribusiness, and that's it. Out of 100 classes or something that, my business school offered, there was one class on agribusiness. And yet I would say that the people who pursued agribusiness back then have done extremely well. And today there may be a few more classes, but it's still generally a little bit overlooked. The entire food industry is a little bit overlooked. It doesn't have the same cachet as maybe fintech or artificial intelligence. And of course, many of those things can be applied to the food industry. But I think that anyone who understands how something can be grown from the ground up, and what it takes to be a farmer, and what it takes to really distribute food, has a great open field without as much competition as in other fields, and yet that offers, I think, significant rewards, both personal and financial. And with that, that's it for me.
Let's make agriculture sexy. I think that it's more exciting than, look, financial technology, AI, I love it all, but let's put the sexy into the agriculture. I think that would work. Jose, what about you? Closing thoughts, and what's the best way to contact you?
So the best way to contact me definitely is on LinkedIn, because that's the easiest way to find me. So Jose Grasa, or just search for BizMoney. By the way, I didn't say it today, but I like much more to be an entrepreneur and building brands than I like being an investor. So for me, it's much more exciting to do that. But my closing thoughts basically goes in this direction, very short. We have a problem on this earth, and the problem is called the human itself, and the amount of humans that we are producing together. So one way to solve the issue is that we are facing a huge amount of growth rate in the amount of individuals or humans that are on the earth. The prediction is that we are going to more or less double in a very short time frame, like 20 or 30 years. The earth, it has more than been proven that it cannot hold on that amount of humans. If you look at nature, right, then, for example, a lion, you don't have many lions. You know why? Because one lion needs more or less like 100 antelopes to survive. So nature regulates the amount of lions that you have in the savannah compared to the amount of animals that a lion needs to be able to reach to survive. So humans need to start rethinking how they want to live on this planet, and the amount of people that this planet can support for us to having a good quality. Nevertheless, it's also proven that once you raise the quality of living from each individual, they automatically start creating less children. Now, it's very funny that the better quality of life you have, the less children you are generating. So I think it should go in two directions. One is that we definitely need to have some kind of control over the amount of humans that this planet can hold on. And second thing is that I'm a big person that is in favor of getting more equal conditions to everybody, so that everybody can have a better life, and also can profit what we have today available. And that has intimately a connection with food, because if we are able to achieve this, then we don't need to produce that huge amount of food that we are facing, that we're going to need to produce in the next 20, 30 years. And I would leave it like that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it is so great. Let's make a life experience beautiful for everybody on our planet. We have the tools, we have everything that we need for it. And I do believe we're getting there. So in a time of doubt, just know we're getting there. We're on our way. Mark, last but not least, closing thoughts, please. And what is the best way to contact you?
First off, I think I used the word perception and perspective wrong during my rant. So I just want to make sure people understand that I know the difference between both of them. To add to something that Jose said about humans, I don't think humans are the problems. I love to drive. We spend summers driving all over Europe. And I think the real problem with humans is density. Everybody wants to live in New York. Everybody wants to live in Paris. But if you drive from Paris to Barcelona, you see nothing but empty spaces for hours and hours and hours. So, I mean, I think we just have to figure that out. And I think there's forces that are trying to get us to live in, because then we become more dependent of food. How much food can you grow on a balcony in a 30-meter square? I live on a 4,000 square meter place here. And I mean, I can grow all type of foods. I don't have that problem, right? So I think it's density. And I mean, density was something that we learned about during this pandemic. My son being stuck in a 30 square meter apartment is different than being stuck on 4,000 square meter. I mean, it's just, you can do a lot of things in 4,000 square meters. You don't feel quarantined. So people can reach me, marklugo.com. That's mainly dedicated to everything that I do in sports and entertainment. And on LinkedIn, and I'm always open to crazy ideas that are kind of analog. And to add to this food thing, there was a time when putting fruits in cans was FoodTech. And a lot of those companies, some of them I saw on Julio's backdrop, they capitalized on being able to come to places like Costa Rica, to United Fruit Company or whatever, and offer farmers machines that shake trees to get the crops to fall. And that was called FoodTech. And they capitalized on that because farmers said, hey, I don't have to hire a whole bunch of people. I could just go buy this machine for $1 million and shake the tree. And that's where we got it. That's how they monopolized food through food shakers and putting foods in cans. And now we eat foods in cans. I don't want to eat foods in cans. So anyway, those are my closing thoughts. It was a pleasure meeting Julio. And I don't know if I use Julio the farmer. It has nothing to do with Julio. I like what Julio's doing because my wife loves beef. So I mean, if someone could preserve that in a space where everyone's saying eat plants as food, as meat, I like what they're doing. I think it's bold, and I would probably invest in American beef.
Well, that's great, guys. We are all counting our blessings, and I think the universe is definitely showing to us that there's a huge exodus from big cities toward kind of closer to the roots, to the places where you do have a piece of grass and maybe can do things. So that's great. By the way, I think you guys will appreciate it. When I was a little kid in Russia, basically it was the children's job to climb on a tree and shake the tree. So you're looking at the proud tree shaker. So I've harvested a lot. I've assisted to harvesting a lot of different fruit trees through being a chief tree shaker. But anyhow, it's pleasure to be here with you, gentlemen. Your insights are so valuable, so beautiful. I really appreciate your time. And viewers, please make sure to follow up. The reason we're here, the reason we're doing it is because we want to make sure to communicate to you that we are here for you. If you're an entrepreneur, connect with us. Again, do not wait to be perfect. If you're a venture capitalist, if you're an investor, also come and participate. Let's open up these discussions. Let's connect. We're here and we're not going anywhere. VCTV team, I appreciate you every single day. And I just really love what you're doing, and your vision is beautiful, and we're here for you. We're here dedicating our time and sharing this mission. Please contact VCTV. I want to see more pitches. Pitch for us and then pitch again. Show us what you got. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Viewers, appreciate you. Looking forward to seeing you next time. And remember, follow, share, and be part of our network. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Irina. And vote. If you haven't voted,